very, very great honor, so thank you for being here. And so my name is Rose Kleckner. I live in Corvallis, Oregon right now, and it's a beautiful place in the Willamette Valley where we do a lot of really fine agriculture. A lot of your berries and fruits and stuff like that come from there. And so I've been having a really good time going to Oregon State University out there, and I graduated with a degree in agriculture science. And so I'm not personally a tiny house person, but I'm hoping to become one. So my interest in agriculture definitely get into the realm of living and lifestyle, and to me it's all connected. So I think there's probably a diversity of people out here and a diversity of interest in what kind of tiny living situation you're looking for. Like, you know, do you want to be mobile? Do you want to be in one spot? Or like, I love what he was just saying about having a bunch of land, because some people are going to end up in the city and some people are going to be able to find a huge, epic, beautiful property in a really special place to put your house. Or maybe just traveling around is a whole nother thing. So if you want to be involved in your landscape, there's a lot of different, you know, opportunities and angles depending on what your interest is and how much gardening you want to do. Or, you know, I think kind of the best approach is a goals-based approach. So whatever your circumstance is, you should probably start at saying, what's really important? What do I really care about? Do I want to have a bunch of butterflies hanging around, or do I want to have a lot of food for myself, and or just garden casually? Or you know, you can do a very small garden that can produce enough food for you and your family and keep you from having to work extra and needing a lot of extra income to buy food. And there's so many ways to go about it, and there's so many tips and tricks depending on what it is you want to do. And my favorite thing to tell anybody is just roots in the ground. Make sure that you are not leaving your soil bare. Because, like, for example, here in Colorado, one of the biggest things is water. And so that gets into our bigger social efforts with gardening, farming, agriculture, living sustainably, is we care about stuff like water. We want to see the planet keep on going around. So taking care of soil and just planting anything and taking care of your land is an amazing opportunity to make sure that you're doing your part in taking care of the sustainability of the world. And so I also want to talk about a little bit of what I've been doing is sculpting up in marble. And so what that's really brought me is a realization of aesthetics. And maybe you don't care at all about farming or gardening or food or any of that, but maybe you just want to be able to have something that looks really nice, or to affect other people. Like when you're having visitors and guests and showing off your lovely home, how great would it be to have a lovely landscape to go with it and be able to say something about, you know, this is not just a plant here that looks good, this is what it's doing. It's feeding the animals, it's giving habitat to pollinators, you know, and then when people come, they're going to be connecting with nature. So you're doing a serious human service by having a nice landscape that you can say something about. And you might get some food out of it too, which is pretty cool. And sometimes really challenging. Like up here in Colorado, it's so dry, and if you're in the mountains, it's almost impossible to grow stuff, but it's not impossible. You can. And here's the number one thing: add organic matter, compost. And if you can't compost, grow plants, because it's the same thing as compost. You're getting roots in the ground. Every little root is creating a home, a habitat for the millions in a pinch, all the billions of microbes that make the plants work, that give us our food, that makes our world keep spinning. So you can feed them, and they're going to clean our water, and they're going to clean our air. And soil holds water, cleans water better than anything. Nature does it best, and I think Becky would really agree with me on that. So that's another thing, is like, you can't take it all on at once. You know, to try to copy nature. Nature's a very clever woman who's figured a lot out over these billion years she's been working here on gardening. So, you know, we got to take it one step at a time. So start with your goals, like I was mentioning. So say maybe you want flowers, maybe you want food, maybe you want to have some livestock, you know, or pets, or just a nice lawn for your dog, or a play pen for your cat. No lawn. Well, see, grass is going to be, we're going to come down to the grass thing.
Lawns are not suggested for the Front Range at all.
Roots in the ground, though. But yeah, there's better grasses than your typical lawn. But let's get into it. I love to talk about lawns because that's one of those things in a landscape. A lot of people think that's the ideal, beautiful landscape, is a perfect, beautiful green lawn, and it's not the best, I think, you know, for water and...
Well, if you want to talk lawns, you know,
Yeah.
here on the Front Range, lawns is all about water. Colorado Springs, there's people here, most people here are from Colorado Springs, and many people in Colorado Springs have no idea that the bulk of the water in Colorado Springs, 75%-ish, comes from the Colorado River. Comes under the mountains in Basalt, comes into Leadville, goes into the Arkansas River. We pull it out at Pueblo, bring it up here, put it in our big reservoirs, suck it up, put it on bluegrass or similar turf. I was in a meeting on Thursday with the local food policy people, and the park people were there, and they go, well, we usually have a 24-inch water budget for our parks here in Colorado Springs. But since we have a drought, we're going to do 16 inches to save water. I'm sitting there listening, and I'm going, well, you know, most of your water comes from the Colorado River, and the Colorado River gets 4 inches a year. So you figure it out. If you're using 16 inches from a 4-inch water source, you're going to run out of water. So I think what you're trying to say is that if we're using water, it is our limiting factor in Colorado. We have pretty good soil if you add organic matter, but you can put everything in your soil you want to, and if you don't have water, you're going to have a hard time getting anything growing besides cactus, which is edible. Not so great for the kids playing soccer, but anyway, so permaculture would say grow something besides grass. The other thing about bluegrass lawn, and if you have a lawn, I hope you don't feel persecuted, but we have an Exxon oil spill across our nation every year with the lawn industry. They're spilling fertilizer, they're spilling oil, they're spilling gasoline, about the same scale. The industry takes this product, it doesn't give us anything to eat, it does very little to combat climate change, but it is an exercise in wasting resources. First the water, you're wasting fossil fuels, you're contaminating soil. Some of the most contaminated water in our country is underneath our cities because of lawns. So I know most of you guys are going to hate me. I'm doing a program on forest gardening at 3 o'clock. I'm talking about things that you can do differently than lawns.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, I think what's really interesting about that drive that we want lawns is kind of, it goes way back, and we kind of do it without thinking. We don't know why we want a lawn. We just do because we think it looks nice.
That's patterns. We follow patterns. People follow patterns. I can prove it to all you guys, whether you're from here or not. Every community you go to has suburbia. When you go into suburbia, they all look alike. Same kind of buildings, same kind of building materials, same kind of plant mediums. You know, it's a pattern that we follow. How we build a house, how we set out our cities. And so lawns is something that we grew up believing it's not our fault. We were just born into having a lawn. Where I grew up, you didn't have to water your lawn. In Colorado, to have a nice lawn, you have to water in the wintertime. That's crazy. So, and also, lawnmowers were invented in 1903. Before that, everybody had a lawn, it was okay. Once they came up with the lawnmower, it totally shifted everything. Whoa, people freaked out. Hey, where's our tech man? People freaked out because all of a sudden it was like, well, what happened to all the flowers? You know, you mow the lawn. If we didn't mow out here, there'd be wildflowers and stuff growing. So you mow your flowers, and then you take away all the benefits that you have. And then you start having to keep mowing, keep mowing, keep mowing. So people had to learn how to like the sight of a turf grass mowed, clipped. Golf courses, I mean, we could still have golf courses if you like to golf, but you know, you don't have to have a golf course at home. Most of the lawns in this country don't even get used except by dogs.
And we could definitely fill up those golf courses with a lot of other cool stuff besides just grass.
The rough would have some rhubarb in it.
Yeah.
The rhubarb rough.
I think the lawn thing just came up a little bit because I think it can make a pretty big difference to show someone else a different concept of what's beautiful and what's pretty and what's good to have in your lawn. And it doesn't just make a new nice thing, but helps people get back in touch with nature and the understanding of what's the functionality of this plant, what's all these bugs doing, what are they doing for me, and understanding most of them are helping you a lot, not hurting you at all.
I agree.
Yeah, and I think it can lead you down a really cool route of getting people outdoors and enjoying something beautiful. And just like when you're building these houses, you know, the last speaker was talking about craftsmanship. It's not always just functionality, but something really magical can happen when you're trying to make something beautiful and also like functional and beneficial for the planet.
Right.
It can benefit you a lot too. I could talk a lot about that, is that I'm a big believer in you can grow your own food, and it's not that hard. Don't tell me you have a black thumb. You can do it, and the benefits of it can totally be worth the struggle.
You know, you said something there, Rose, a little earlier about being in the urban or being out rural. And the thing of it is, I mean, if you think about what we've done with suburbia, suburbia actually is an opportunity for the future. If you don't have all those lawns, and you do have all the buildings, and you have all the people there, you have all the rainwater can be used, and you can actually create a suburban paradise where you're growing fruit trees, there's grapevines, there's places for kids to play and roll around. There's actually such a community, it's called Village Homes in Davies, California, where they designed it all around. The buildings dump all the water into the water swales that feed the trees. The kids can go all around the community and never even get out in a street. They actually set up little fruit stands, like, would you like to buy some apples? Even though they're like right there, but you know, the kids are 3. It's like, oh sure, here, I'll buy an apple. But it creates a community sense where your food is right there and you're not separate from it. I would say every bit of food here is from somewhere else. And I know you're not from here. We have no food security in Colorado Springs. Most of the food that we eat comes from somewhere else. That is not sustainable. In the face of some huge event, which we are in a time now of huge events, we don't have any food, very little. There's less than 3% of the food that we eat here comes from here. So, I mean, to me, that's pretty sobering. You're a food person, but the thing about urban and rural is it's a lot harder in a rural community to make things happen, because in a rural community you don't have the manpower. In an urban village community, which is, we are people of the village. Humanity evolved out of villages. First we were the tribe, and then we became the village, and where everybody works for the common good and for the common benefit. In suburbia, we have all kinds of people that need a job. Right now we have tons of people that need a job. If we could put half of them together growing food in suburbia, we'd be a lot happier. Our food would be better, it'd be fresher, because everything you get off a truck is not fresh. And so the vision is, we don't have to go anywhere. There's so many people that say, oh, I gotta go get my 40 acres. Well, that's because we live in a culture that doesn't satisfy us right now. And we have to look at those basic tenets that are being missed, like community, peace, and quiet. When I moved here in '83, it was actually pretty peaceful and quiet. Now it is noisy and crowded. How do we deal with that? Well, a lot of people, I'm just going to go get my 40 acres. Well, permaculture would say, if everybody, there's not enough land, first off, for everybody to go out and get 40 acres. What we need to do is figure out our own mess and figure it out to where it soothes us. We have community, we have food outside our door, nature spaces, spaces for little kids to play, safe spaces, and then you go out into the nature, out into the outer spaces for spiritual reboot, for your, what would you call it, your retreats and stuff, to get away from the hubbub of the city. But the hubbub of the city is just us. So we can change that. We can change the harmony of that and create something where we don't feel like we have to run away. Because if we have to run away, we're going to be in big trouble, truly.
Yeah, I feel like similar to the lawn thing is a gardening problem, which is trying to copy industrial agriculture, doing rows and watering and irrigating and thinking.
We can talk about that.
Yeah, thinking I've got to do all this work and do it this way and that way, and we can get a lot from observing nature and watching, like, nature doesn't make rows, you know, nature doesn't import anything, you know, everything that's there is getting utilized and nothing's getting wasted. And that's a high bar, but actually I think you have a much happier, better time trying to garden that way than in a bunch of rows.
Well, yeah, well, rows if you take a 10-foot square and put rows in it, you can grow some food. Rows are actually for wheels. They're so you can move your plow over it, so you can move your combine over it, so you can move your tractor over it. You don't have wheels in town, and you're actually losing space. So there's like square foot gardening. You can like put things in. There's also scatter patterns where you can just throw your seeds out there and let them grow in a community. You can actually, who says it has to be straight? You can make a spiral. Can you imagine putting a spiral in your garden with beet seeds? And get this big purple leaf spiral that you can see from the second floor. Go, oh man.
There's another aesthetic thing. You can make
you're
something
just playing
so
with
beautiful.
seeds.
Yeah.
But you take that that same 10 square feet and you put in a keyhole garden, which is a different technique of gardening, and you can grow more food in that than you can with your rows. And it's less work. And the other thing about standard industrialized gardening is tilling the soil. Let's talk about that.
Oh, sure. I'd be glad to talk about that. So one of my favorite things is actually soil, and just stop me if I get too nerdy on it. But the reason that we're like really not a big fan of tilling, and a lot of people into organic agriculture try to strive away from tillage, is because what we were talking about, the organic matter that you add, that creates the habitat for the microbes and the plant roots and everybody down there. You destroy it, you burn it up. It's kind of like a fire. When you move it and break it apart, the sun gets in there, the oxygen gets in there, and just the chemical reactions move just like a fire. It burns away all of that good stuff. Questions?
So then what's the alternative to that? 'Cause
Yeah. So one
permaculture.
cover crops
what
would
does it
be one of my favorite things to say about that is don't rip your plant out when you're done with the tomato. Cut it off and throw a cover crop over it and let that grow. It'll be gone by the time you're back in spring.
So plant when it's wet.
You can also just, when I'm doing annuals and stuff, you dump the fall leaves on them. There's always this particular neighbor in every neighborhood that takes all of his leaves and puts them out for the trash. You just go grab them because leaves are worm food. And so the metaphor I like to use for soil, you can use this, is a coral reef. Your soil has these big blooms of organisms just like a coral reef. And when you run a tiller through it, that's like taking the coral reef and chopping it up into little pieces and going, there, that's better. Well, that's really not better, and that sets the coral reef way back. So every time you till, you're setting your soil back. You don't really know it because most people till in manure.
Yeah.
And they have to do that because their soil is not strong and healthy. So they give it all this injection of, if it were any other species, it'd be a drug of manure. So they get a crop. But if you don't till your soil, you just kind of, you dig a little hole in your plant, or you put in a little scoring and you put your seeds in. You let things grow. I mean, if stuff grows that you don't want, you just pull it and lay it back down. The idea of your soil, if we keep robbing the soil and, oh, we don't need this and this, and throw it away, throw this away, and that's where a compost pile comes in. You don't actually even need a compost pile. You can just chop and drop. Chop and drop on the ground, and the soil eats it. The soil is alive. In fact, now they've realized so much that you let your kids eat dirt.
Yep.
You don't have to wash your vegetables. Well, you do if it comes from Walmart. You have to get your produce from the right place. But you don't wash all that stuff off your produce. You get all the stuff you can see, but you don't antiseptically clean your produce because there's nutrients on the skins that you want to eat. And we've been depriving ourselves with this false illusion of everything has to be so darn clean. Now we're finding out that Betty Crocker was wrong. Having a super clean house does not make you stronger, it makes you weaker. Having a soil that is not strong doesn't grow better plants, it's weaker. You can keep tilling forever. The minute you stop tilling, that soil goes into some kind of a reaction and it's not good. If you let nature, if you follow what nature's doing, then you never have to do that.
I think it's just another one of those tempting things that we think that's what I should do, and you can maybe not. You're like, how do I get the seed into the ground? This dirt is hard, it's compost. You won't have to dig to make your soil have till.
Sheet mulch on top.
Sheet mulch,
You don't
and
even
then
have to
you
dig it in, just put it
can
on
put
top.
your seeds right into your mulch. And if you have hard soil below it, you don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of that in the class. I need a timekeeper because I'm supposed to be there at 3.
Might be about that time.
So you guys just seem riveted.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions?
15 minutes.
15 minutes for me?
Yep.
Okay, because this was supposed to be 20 minutes. So,
You're
you
good.
guys have any questions about your soil? Question? All right. Who's saying goodbye?
Yeah,
Goodbye.
thanks for listening.
No, you don't have to add worms. If you build it, they will come.
Right.
And you can do worm boxes and
Yeah, you can
keep
do
your
that.
worms as kind of pets or livestock if you want to do that.
The compost worms usually come. You build compost, you'll find red wigglers. If you really doubt it, you can go get a little thing of fishing worms and dump that in there. The thing is, there's all different kinds of worms. Those big night crawlers, you throw those in your compost. If they can't get out, they'll die because they're not compost worms. They are field worms. They go up and down, 6 feet up and down in the soil. They go all the way down in the wintertime. And they come up when it rains. And so, where's that guy? Who is that guy?
CNC.
So anyway, your red wigglers, you really don't have to go buy them. They will die in the wintertime, but they'll lay little, what's called castings, not castings, what are those called? They're little capsules. And they have like 5 or 6 eggs in them, and they'll hatch out in the springtime when the temperature gets right, and then you'll have more red wigglers. And if your compost is such that it supports them through the winter, they will be in there in the winter. They won't even have to die. And so, I mean, you can get your compost so dense with worms, it's like a horror show. It's like, oh no, because it's just like with worms. And that's what you want. That's really what you want. And if you have more worms, then you just go out and dig a hole, not too deep, like maybe 6 inches, put them in there and put compost on top of them, and then they'll disperse into your landscape. The whole idea is that we're working way too hard on our landscapes.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to have to go.
Yeah.
But are you
Thank
coming
you
over
so
to
much for
join
your
me?
help. I sure will.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Do I do this?
Thank you.
All right. No, Ted, I'm